Congratulations, the series is fantastic.
Thank you.
As an American, I did not grow up with ASTERIX and Obelix. I'm a bit familiar with the franchise just through small exposure, so this was the first time I've really sat down and watched a lot of it, and it's fantastic. Nominated for a bunch of Annies yesterday, and hopefully some international stuff and going forward. But I wonder if you could talk specifically and explain to us what your job was on this show and what that means a typical day was like for you. Because you're based in Europe. This is a Netflix series, so it's global. But you've got people working in France. How was your day like when you were working in production?
Yeah, so I worked on the project for 3 years as a production designer. So basically, I was in charge of all the look of the project, from the first sketches to the final image. So I was working with all the team. I was based in London, and all the fabrication was being made in a studio called TIT in Toulouse. So there was a lot of Zoom calls initially, and then I was going every month. I was going to Toulouse to be with the team, to brief them, to talk. And so basically we always start with the sketches. I was talking with the director. So basically my role is to make sure that the director can tell the story they want with the picture, and like in every shot, the lighting, the colors, the design, all the intent fit the story, and we really like all the choices are made for the story and for the emotion. That's the most important.
And on a show like this, where you play so much with form and format, there in the 3 episodes that we saw, I mean, you see a little bit of animatic, which is very fun. You get to see the fake kids show when he's staring at the sun, which is one of the funniest gags in the entire series. The video game mosaic skit, and then there's I don't want to spoil stuff, but in the final episodes there is more different stuff as well. What does that mean for you? Because you have to put several styles on the screen. Is that difficult? Does that mean, do you have to compartmentalize and maybe one day we're only going to work in this type of animation and we're going to focus really hard on this? Is that something where you have to sort of give that to someone else maybe whose specialty is that type of work and that type of animation?
Yeah, so I think all the small segments were so different from the rest of the series. Were a massive challenge, but also were so fun. But this was a big reason for why I wanted to work on that show. It was all the diversity. Every episode felt different. Every episode had its own personality, and all those key segments were a lot of work, because obviously it's completely out of the pipe. So we had to find a way to create all the look of the series, and then we have to find the look for each of those individual segments. So we have to find a way to make it with a budget, obviously. And so something was just attributing to one artist, so we could really focus all his attention on that small video clip. And the moment where Asterix is in 2D, just in a line test, this one was animated fully in 2D by Christophe Serron, was our sorry.
No, that's all right.
Was the animation director on the Netflix side, and he animated on the original 2D Asterix.
Okay.
So basically, yeah, so it was original animator, and he did those amazing.
Very cool. So he gets to come back and be on the new adaptation.
Yeah. It was so useful on the project. It's kind of thanks to him that too.
And more than just having the people there, you have a sort of an obligation when you're adapting something, because this is the biggest comic series in French history. It's been adapted many times before, sometimes great, sometimes not as great. But you have not only the obligation to try to do the best you can for the franchise, but you made this series for Netflix too, which means it's going to be everywhere and probably be a lot of people's introduction to this very historic, very important property. As an artist, what does that mean to you when you're working on developing the look and you're trying to work with all the animators? Because like you said, you're responsible from the initial drawings all the way to the image that ends up on the final screen. How does that work when you are adapting something that is already so well known, but half the people seeing it maybe seeing it for the first time?
Yeah, so it's a massive challenge, and it was a big pressure because Asterix is so big in France. I don't think like in the US it's very well known, but in all Europe and especially France, and it's very massive, and we all grew up with those characters. So we had to be very fidel and faithful to the original comic books, and at the same time bringing something new because there were already several adaptations in animation, in 3D, and in live action. So we wanted to make it slightly different because it's a different format. It's a TV series, and we wanted to bring a bit more of the comic book aspect to always like link. It's 3D, but there's always like some graphic element. This was very important for us, so something we wanted to do and was important for me is that the tactile aspect. So like because we couldn't do something super 2D because we had to use a pipeline of the studio in Toulouse, and I wanted also like to make sure that every artist on the team could give their best. And the look of the studio was more like a classic 3D. So I wanted, so I didn't want to push them to something too 2D because it would have been too complex, and I think we didn't have the time or the budget to reinvent a completely way to do. So it was really like using their strength, so something more realistic, but adding all those 2D elements to bring it back to the comic book.
Yeah, and you see it right away in the very first scene with it's such a comic, you know, with the talk bubbles and the sound, the sound effects. This series, it's not a musical series, but there's a tremendous amount of music in it, and the animation is very, very well timed to that music. It helps the jokes land, it helps the visual gags land. In your work, what does that mean in a given day when you're working on something where the music is so integrated into the rhythm of the animation, as opposed to working on something that maybe is a bit more, you know, narrative driven and dialogue, and the music is in the background rather than sort of, you know, pushing certain scenes?
Well, for me, it wasn't changing. It didn't have a big impact because I was fully focused on the images. This was more for the directors who had to choreograph and then work a lot with the music composer. So for me, actually, I didn't have to think too much about it, except for in terms of rhythm, some sequences where with all the potion and we have like all the transformations. This one we have to think and time it with the music. So this was like one of the this was like one of the only sequence where I already had personally to focus on that. But
you mentioned that you had to design all these different animation styles. You also had to design two different cultures in this. It's the Gauls and the Romans, and then probably complicating things even more, you have this Gallic Roman village, which is like a mix of both. How much did you draw directly sort of from the comics or from previous adaptations, and how much, you know, research went into looking back at what Gaul would have looked like around, you know, that time period just before, you know, 50 BC, I think it was.
Yeah. Yeah, so this was a big part, very like giving like each of the world their own feeling, their proper feeling. And because the characters are so fidel to the comic book, I think in terms of background and set design, that gave me a bit more leeway and a bit more freedom to experiment and to go sometimes a bit slightly different from the comic book. We like to expand because because of the script, a lot of the set needed to be bigger or like bring much more stuff, especially like episode 4 and 5 were like a big arena, which is not in the comic book. So I felt I had a lot of freedom for the set, and the way that the most important was to get the right feeling. So not being necessarily pixel perfect to the comic book, but bringing the same feeling to it. And for instance, for the village, we wanted to be all the shapes are very round. Everything is very gentle and rough. All the shapes are so irregular, so nothing is perfect. So it's like the villagers. It's very chaotic. So this was the main direction, and for the Roman, everything is square, everything is massive. So it's really chance of scale. And then for the Gallo-Roman, sorry, we kind of mix both. And the idea was that they take all the leftovers of the Roman Empire and they try to copy, but they copy badly. So you start to end up like a massive patchwork, quite inelegant, with like colors that don't go very well together. So
the columns that were stacked incorrectly, with the bigger parts on top and the smaller on the bottom.
Yeah. So it's very like they try to recreate their classic houses, but with some different elements.
For those of you who don't know, your resume is very impressive. You've got a lot of feature film work in addition to series. He's worked in the Spider-Verse franchise. He worked on Inside Out 2, Ron's Gone Wrong, some really huge titles. You mentioned earlier that with the series and with the French series, there are different budgetary constraints with what you can and can't do. How does that affect your work when you go from working on a $200 million Pixar film where they can edit and cut, and if something doesn't look right, they can get rid of it, to a series that's being made on a European budget with a European team where sort of like every dollar needs to make it to the screen? You know, what kind of responsibility does that put on your shoulders?
Yes, so of course, it's a massive difference, and on a big feature film, we can redo things to a certain point, but here we could do like things twice, but not 3 times. So basically, we had to hit right most of the time. So and also we wanted, because I mostly worked on features. The director mostly worked on features, so we really wanted to push this aspect. We wanted to have a thematic look. We didn't want it to look like a TV series with always like a very flat lighting, or because this is very efficient, is much easier to do, but we wanted to look like a feature, and but with much tinier budget. So because of that, the key was to plan ahead, and we like making sure that that the team. So when the team were working, so they know that they could do the work once, and you go in the movie on the screen. And that was the most, So I was trying to make all the mistakes myself before, so then the team could focus on how to make the images pretty and not changing because we wanted to change the light or direction. So I was trying to do all the groundwork myself, basically.
So when you do like test screenings, or when you're looking at the final image, which is ultimately your responsibility, are you thinking about small screens, phones, TVs, tablets? You know, how often do you get to see it big like this? Because one of the things that really struck me today, this is my first time seeing it on the big screen, is it looks great up there. It doesn't look like something that's being stretched up to a big screen. It looks native up there. I think maybe some of the things you talked about with texture helped with that it isn't overly complicated, so when you do scale it up, it works. But is that something that you're thinking about when you're making something that is going to go straight to streaming, rather than something that is going to go into a theater where most people who see it are going to see it first on a big screen?
It's true that, yes. So we work all the production on computer monitors. So of course we rarely saw it in such a big screen, and obviously it was made for TV. But all the team was, because Asterix Obelix is such like, everybody on the team grew up with those characters, so everybody was really pour all their love, and from every department, everybody really like push extra every time. And I think that's what you can see on the big screen, is that all the things that were not necessary, they're here because of like all the attention to detail. And it was also because the characters are very simple, and we wanted like a very to keep the simplicity of the skin. It was always like finding a balance between simplicity and complexity. So we put all the details in the clothing because we wanted it to be tactile. So all the metal, all the fabric with this push, but then the characters stay very flat colors and a lot of volume, but there's not a lot of detail in the skin. I think that leaves the image brief.
And you had to design, obviously, most of the characters you had to design at least twice, some of them perhaps even more. Is that something where you know, what's the order there? How does it work when you're thinking, obviously the show starts with them as the adult characters, but is that where you started, or did you start with the younger characters first? How does that work practically during development and then during production when you're establishing what this show is going to look like, you know, years from now when it's finally finished?
Yeah, so we started with the adult because this was the easiest. Those are the one we see in the comic book, so this was like a known territory. And also like we walk so we started to do the episode 2, then episode 4, 1, 5, and the last episode to enter in production was episode 3.
Okay.
So
the one we just saw was the last one you did. Okay.
So that's what we did, and this one we had to go so fast to make it. We probably made it like twice as fast as the other episode, but because the team knew everything and everybody was very used with the character, with the look, it went very fast, and actually that's one of my favorite because it just happened like that. There was just no time, but it went very well. And I think of course the episode 2 was the first one to go in production. This is the one who took the longest because you had to find the look, you do like all the mistakes first, you just try. All the team need to get used to the way of working, and then the episode 5, which is like the most epic. This one has a lot of effects, and this one is a cool one too. I really like it.
Yeah, if you haven't seen the whole series, it is already available on Netflix, so it's absolutely worth watching all the way to the end. I don't know how you wouldn't do that automatically after seeing what we've seen today, but the studio in France who did the animation, how many people were you in charge of? How many people in total were working on this series for most of the production?
So I think in total, I don't want to say, I think we're almost 200. I wasn't in charge of everybody because I wasn't in charge, for instance, of the animation. Animation was very like, there was like, they had their own supervisor, and the director were working very closely with the animator. I was very in charge of the pictures, but not the animation.
And how long was production on this? Because you mentioned, obviously, it's variable per episode, but from the time you went into production to the time you finished, how long was that? And was this, from the beginning, was this a Netflix production, or was this something that started, you know, at TAT and then, you know, went to Netflix after that? Or is this like 100% like a real, I know there are a lot of things called Netflix originals, but this one is like truly original, I think.
Yeah. So it was very made with Netflix from the beginning. And from writing to finish, I think it was 5 years. Okay. And for me, from the production, it was like I was on it for 3 years. So it was take a lot of time to develop the idea, to get the funding, to get the green light. But it was like 3 years. So it was we didn't have a massive team, but we had some time to do it. So that's why it's it helped.
And I imagine the team, you know, when you start, it's probably fewer people, and then you ramp up, and the more you need more people, so you hire more people, and then the closer you get to the end, well, it sounds like the end was a sprint, so maybe the full team was there all the way till the end. But is that the case where you have, you know, where it's not 200 people there the whole time, but people are maybe coming and go? I mean, for a lot of people, 5 years is a long time to be on one job, and especially in animation, where a lot of people go from, you know, project to project or are freelancers. Is there a bit of, you know, immigration, maybe the wrong word, but people coming and going throughout a production like this?
Yeah. So we, like, the art team was quite small. We wasn't very big. I think we probably had like about 10 artists because it was better at the beginning to be small, so we can be more reactive, and it's less. It's not like a big boat to move, but indeed, like the more the production move forward, and the more like people come, and then it becomes to be very, very big. So we start very small, and then the different 3D departments join the project, and we have the modeling, then we have the surfacing, then we have the lighting, then the FX, and they're always like about 20 people department, so it's kind of grow, and sometimes they overlap a bit, but there's always one team almost finish when the other start, and so yeah, so it's like, well.
And then how does it work with the different aesthetic sequences? So you've got, you mentioned that you had one guy did the entire line test scene. But are the teams, is it the same team doing the 3D, for the actual show that did the 3D in the little kids show? There's, I don't know if it's a spoiler, but there's a really fun at the end of the final episode 2D short that is like traditional hand-drawn 2D anime. It looks fantastic, completely different than the rest of the show. And you were explaining to me before that it has a character that fans of Asterix and Obelix will know that maybe other people won't. But it was sort of your way to get the wild boar character into the series, even though it was not part of the main narrative.
Yeah. So it was the same team at TID Studio who did like everything. So even the most stylized sequences were made in 3D. And it was the same team, so they just have to find a different way to do it. But it was the same artist, and the final 2D shot was made in a different studio in Paris. And and the wild boar was an important character, or they are a recurrent character. And in the very first version of the story, there were like coming and going through the series like Scratch in Ice Age. And I think for many reasons they got cut, and the director were a bit sad. They were so sad that the only wild boar we see in the series were just like
hallucinations.
They're just like food, and it was like, we can't do that. So basically they brought them back as animals in a short film. Bonus short film.
So how do you, when you're deciding on the final look, and you're working with something that has such an established look? I mean, there are certain things in the visual language of this property that you have to stick with, that are obligatory, otherwise fans are going to turn away from it right away. But I imagine that as an artist, there are things you'd like to do to maybe push it forward too. If you're going to remake something that has already been remade before, you should probably do something different. I don't know. Were there things that you tried to do? Was there anything that maybe you wanted to do that someone had to sort of pull you back and say that's a little too much, or like what's new in this? That was exciting for you to add to the sort of canon of this property.
Yeah. So I think that like the characters we could change them, and also we wanted to be as fidel as possible to the comic book. So it was very like this intention of being respectful, but then I think like on the lighting and on the colors I really try to push, and but for that I took in references the very first edition of the comic book in the 60s, because there's the original artist was colorblind, so all the first edition he did himself the colors, and they were super funky. So you were like pink skies, and the character from one panel they were green, from the other panel they were blue, and so basically all the transformation I took the colors from those first edition, and you can't find them anymore because now like all the colors been made by computer, so like all the grass is green, all the sky are blue, and I wanted to bring back all those funky colors. So we use them for the transformation, for the magic potion also. So you always get like some weird mix of colors in the skies, and those were inspired by those very first edition. Yeah, so it's all about briefing the artist and the team the right way, and making sure that every department and end up with a result that the other department can use, and with the less loss of information, and I was always there to make sure that the message was being kept, and but yeah, so basically it's always like being because during the 3 years so many things can happen, you can just forget, so it's always like keeping track of what we wanted, what the director wants, and make sure that we just all the departments keep the big picture.
And on an individual level, it's always interesting when I talk to filmmakers because, especially in animation, because these productions last so long that you might make a decision 3 or 4 years ago that you then have to rethink and decide, did I make the right decision then? Oh no, maybe I want to do it differently now. Like, how much trust do you have to have in yourself that you made the right decision 3 or 4 years ago? And how often do you allow yourself to make a change because you think it's the right thing to do? You know, I imagine it must get easy to get lost in your own head and second guess yourself when you're working on something for 5 years in this case.
I mean, there are things you can't really change because all the teams starting on that. So we say, okay, if we change that, it's going to be a massive mess. But then obviously the story change, there's always some new ideas coming on. So we need to be kind of flexible, but still like keep the big picture in mind. And on that project, I mean, I always try to push the maximum I can, and I always expect the director to tell me, oh, that's a bit too much. And on this one, I was always surprised because I was proposing things. They said, oh, this could be very cool, but I think they're gonna say no, but I'm gonna attempt. Let's push that. And 99% I was okay. Let's do it. So I think there was this trust, and it was such a good feeling because everybody was having fun. I felt like I could take some risk, and the director were backing me, and then the team knew that okay, we're doing that, but we're not going to be asked to change later because everybody trusts everyone. So yeah, it was such a nice. I mean, it should be like that, but really, it's just never like that.
Yeah. As an art, like, what are you doing then? You know, do you have your own projects too that you're working on in the background? You know, you always hear anytime a filmmaker speaks who does studio stuff like this for a Netflix or something, they always kind of maybe have something too that they're working on in the background. Is that the case with you? Do you have your own projects you're working on, or your own, or other you know, like painting or other, you know, art forms that you like to experiment with?
I don't. I mean, unfortunately, I think I'm trying to do more personal projects now. But I love my job and have the chance to work on very fun projects. So actually, I feel quite balanced and happy to just work on projects. And sometimes I can work on several projects.
I guess that's my bigger question is because with your resume, a lot of your films overlap. So if it's a 5-year production, but you were on, you know, Hotel Transylvania 3 and Spider-Verse and Inside Out 2, they didn't come out 5 years apart. Yeah, so you must be doing several things at once.
Yeah. So for instance, while I was on ASTERIX, I also took some part-time moment, and I worked for Pixar a bit, or I worked for Sony, and so because the good thing is that because the production was relatively long. Sometimes they need my input, like very intensely, but then it's good to leave the team just bring their own ideas and work, and sometimes just being part-time is enough as long as like every day I'm here for the meetings, and but that keeps the balance. Yeah.
Great. Well, I think that's all of our time today. Thank you so much, Aurélien. Congratulations on the series. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Have a great afternoon.